She waited at the edge of hope for so long that even the seasons grew tired of returning. The road outside her window changed. The trees shed their leaves and grew them back. The sky learned new shades of gray, but her heart stayed fixed in one fragile moment where a promise had been made and never reclaimed. This is not a story about love arriving on time. This is a story about patience, endurance, and the quiet cruelty of passing years. It begins with a woman who believed waiting was a form of faith, and with time itself, which never waits for anyone. Before this story unfolds any further, pause for a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the silent strength of people who keep loving even when it hurts, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that are still waiting. Her name was Eileen, and she lived in a small town where memories clung to walls like old paint. It was a place where everyone knew everyone else's past, where footsteps echoed louder at night, and where promises carried weight because there was nowhere to hide from them. She had grown up here, learned to dream here, and learned to wait here. The town was not cruel by nature, but it was honest in a way that hurt. Every street corner reminded her of who she used to be and who she thought she would become. She met him when life still felt generous. Back then, the future looked wide and forgiving, as if mistakes could always be corrected later. He arrived in her world like a sudden change in weather, unexpected and overwhelming. He carried ambition in his posture and restlessness in his eyes, the kind that made people believe he was meant for something more than the limits of that town. With him, she felt seen in a way she never had before. Her ordinary thoughts suddenly felt important. Her quiet dreams seemed worthy of being spoken aloud. Their love did not explode into existence. It grew slowly, patiently, like something meant to last. Days blended into nights, and moments turned into routines. They shared simple things that later became sacred in her memory: long walks under dim streetlights, unspoken understandings, laughter that felt like home. He spoke often about the future, about leaving the town, about becoming someone bigger than he was. She listened with pride and fear, because she knew dreams had a habit of demanding sacrifices. When the day came for him to leave, it did not arrive dramatically. It came quietly, disguised as opportunity, a job in a distant city, a chance to prove himself, a promise that this distance was temporary, that love like theirs could survive anything. She stood with him at the bus station, holding on to certainty as if it were a physical thing. He told her he would come back. He told her to wait, and she believed him, because love at that age feels indestructible. The first year was easy. Messages arrived often, filled with longing and reassurance. She learned his new schedule, imagined his new life, and folded herself into the shape of waiting. She found comfort in routine. Every morning, she woke up believing one day closer meant one day nearer to his return. Time felt like an ally then, something that worked in her favor. The second year was harder. Messages grew shorter. Silence began to stretch between replies. She told herself he was busy, that success demanded attention. She defended him even in her own thoughts. When people asked if she was still waiting, she smiled and said yes with a confidence that surprised even her. Waiting became part of her identity, something she wore like a badge of loyalty. By the third year, the town had started to change its tone. Concern replaced curiosity. People looked at her with gentle pity, the kind that pretends to be kindness. Friends moved on, married, had children. Invitations became fewer, not out of cruelty, but because her life no longer aligned with theirs. She still lived in that suspended moment, while everyone else continued forward. Nights became longer. Sleep came harder. The future began to feel like a room she was not allowed to enter. She tried to fill the emptiness with purpose. She worked, helped her family, involved herself in community events. On the surface, she looked functional, even strong. But inside, everything revolved around an absence. Every sound of a phone notification made her heart jump. Every unfamiliar car passing through town stirred hope. Waiting had stopped being romantic. It had become exhausting. Years passed quietly, almost cruelly, The world shifted in ways she could not control. Her parents aged. Her friends became strangers to her daily life. Lines appeared on her face, faint at first, then undeniable. She began to notice time not as days or months, but as loss, lost opportunities, lost versions of herself, lost chances to choose differently. There were moments when doubt crept in, sharp and unwelcome. She wondered if he would recognize her now, if the person she had become was still the one he had promised to return to. She questioned whether love that required this much waiting was love at all. But every time she tried to imagine letting go, her chest tightened with a grief deeper than disappointment. Letting go felt like erasing her past, like admitting that all those years had been spent believing in something that never existed. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived, not a message, not a call, but a physical letter, as if time itself had decided to mock her. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The words inside were polite, distant, and devastating. He wrote about his life, his success, and the path he had chosen. He wrote about how things had changed, how people grow apart, how some promises belong only to the moment they are made. He wished her well. He thanked her for understanding. There was no apology. There was no invitation to wait any more. The room felt smaller as she finished reading. Years collapsed into seconds. Every moment she had preserved in her heart suddenly felt fragile, almost imaginary. She did not cry immediately. Shock held her steady, numb and silent. It was only later, as night settled in and the town grew quiet, that the weight of it all pressed down on her. She mourned not just him, but the life she had postponed, the choices she had never made, the version of herself that believed waiting was enough. The days that followed were heavy and disorienting. Without waiting, she did not know who she was. Her routines felt empty, stripped of meaning. She moved through her life like a visitor, observing without participating. But grief, when fully felt, has a way of clearing space. Slowly, something unfamiliar began to surface beneath the pain. Anger, yes, but also clarity. For the first time in years, the future was undefined, and that frightened her less than she expected. She began to notice the world again, the way sunlight filled her room in the mornings, the sound of children playing outside, the comfort of small, ordinary moments she had ignored while waiting for something bigger. She realized how much of herself she had placed on hold, how quietly she had accepted loneliness as the price of loyalty. Change did not arrive all at once. It came in small, almost invisible decisions. She enrolled in a course she had always wanted to take. She traveled to a nearby city alone, feeling both terrified and alive. She made new connections, not romantic at first, but human, grounding. With each step forward, the weight of waiting loosened its grip. There were still nights when memories returned uninvited, still moments when she wondered what might have been if time had been kinder. But she learned to sit with those thoughts without letting them define her. She learned that loving deeply was not a weakness. Even if it had cost her years, it was proof that her heart was capable of devotion. And that mattered. One day, as she walked past the old bus station where everything had paused for her so long ago, she realized something profound. She was no longer standing still. The place looked smaller now, less powerful. Time had taken much from her, but it had also given her resilience. She had survived waiting. She had survived disappointment. And now she was choosing herself. Just before the story draws to a close, take a moment to comment below. Share one word that describes how this story makes you feel. Your words matter, and they may help someone else who is still waiting feel less alone. Life did not reward her patience in the way she once imagined. There was no dramatic reunion, no apology that made everything worthwhile. But life offered her something quieter and perhaps more valuable. A chance to begin again, not as someone waiting, but as someone living. She understood now that time is not an enemy, but it is unforgiving. It moves forward regardless of our hopes, and it asks us to move with it. Near the end of her journey, she no longer measured her life by years lost, but by strength gained. She learned that love should not require self-erasure, and that waiting should never mean disappearing. Her story was not a tragedy, nor was it a fairy tale. It was real, uneven, and deeply human. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you lost, or of yourself at a time when you were waiting for something that never came, please like this video, share it, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, reaching those who need to hear that it is never too late to choose yourself. She waited for him, and time did not. But in the end, she found something even more enduring than the promise she lost. She found herself, standing firmly in the present, no longer asking time to stop, but finally ready to walk forward with it.